It's Monday, everybody, and we here at Foodwell Alliance are launching a bit of a new series, a little show on Instagram. We're calling the Monday Morning Gardener. So, as many of you may know, many of you may have started down this path yourself, but there's a lot more people gardening these days, many of whom are gardening for the first time. And so we wanted to have a little bit of a show where we have our gardening experts on the team. Today, it's the famous Fred Conrad. And I think the big news from today is that Fred Conrad is now on Instagram. You can follow him, Fred Conrad Atlanta. We're going to be speaking to him here in just a minute. And we've got 3 questions from a couple from staff, a couple from friends and family. But moving forward, we want to get questions from you that you may be having to do with your garden. If you're maybe having an issue with a certain type of plant or a pest, we want to try to provide you with some help and insight. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on my friend Fred, and we are going to talk and help y'all keep growing. So let's see if we can get Fred in here on the stream. There he is.
Yep. Hey.
Fred, you've been on Instagram for about 3 days, and you're already doing your first live stream.
Yeah.
That's like you're going from beginner level to expert in just a couple of days.
That's pretty crazy. But yeah, 2 days actually. Yesterday I signed up.
Well, that's good to hear. So Fred and I were hoping to join you this morning from our garden, but for me, it's extremely windy out, and you wouldn't be able to hear me. And Fred is being drowned out by a leaf blower. So we are indoors today, but be on the lookout for us at a few community gardens, perhaps, or at our home garden moving forward. Fred, since this is the first episode, I'm assuming most people at Foodwell know a bit about you and your history, but I was wondering if you could kind of just tell us a brief overview of kind of what your role here in the community garden world and local food space in general has been.
The Foodwell Alliance has a community garden support program, which offers a variety of services to community gardens in the 5-county area that we serve. Mostly we just respond to requests for help. So we have a very robust volunteer program during normal times. We usually do 3 community volunteer work days every week, year-round, and provide a lot of muscle to community gardens. We also do plowing, tilling. We provide seedlings, seeds, other services that we can get them. We regift donations of tools and things, other garden supplies that come in at various times. And mostly our goal is to make sure that community gardens thrive.
Yes. And so, as you mentioned, volunteer days are no longer a part of our offering for now, but with some help on seedlings and compost, as well as some extra labor support from our friend Kari Diop, who's definitely been lending some more support for gardens. But also, we've been working on some virtual experiences and learning, such as this one, which again, we're calling this the Monday Morning Gardener series. So after you've been out all weekend in your garden, maybe you've noticed some pests, maybe you've noticed that some leaves are wilting, you're not sure if you're watering enough, ask us your question, and we will get them answered here on the Monday Morning Gardener. So, first things first, Fred. Well, actually, I want to hear about your garden. What is going on in your garden today?
Well, the very cool spring has had an interesting side effect of things that like hot weather. The warm season crops that we normally planting this time of year are off to a pretty slow start. So tomatoes are growing, beans are sprouting, cucumbers are coming up, but they're not popping up out of the ground like we would expect for this late in the season. But the forecast right now is we're going to start hitting the 80s every day, starting this week, later, like Wednesday, Thursday, or something like that. And at that point, things ought to just shoot up you would normally expect them to, substantial daily growth on plants that thrive in warm weather. The only hiccup there is that some plants are actually more dependent on soil temperatures than they are on air temperature. So some things are going to grow. It's going to take a little minute for the soil to warm up, and then things like pepper plants will start to grow faster. But while the soil is cool, they are going to be moving a little slow.
Yeah, I've noticed that in my garden as well. My hot peppers are not really digging this weather right now, but hopefully, to your point, starting later in the week, they will start to thrive. All right, so this is our first official question for the Monday Morning Gardener series. This actually comes from my dad, Andrew Carter, in Alpharetta, Georgia. He's got a lot of blackberries that are about to turn. They're very green. They look like blackberries, but they're just about to ripen. Now, his major concern is the birds. He wanted to know if you had any advice for how to keep birds away from the blackberries so that he can actually enjoy them this year.
Well, blackberries are sometimes a big tangly mess. I actually ate my first wild blackberry last week. There were some coming in ripe down at the down in a garden in Ormwood Park. So I tasted some, and they were delicious, fantastic. But because blackberries can become a tangly, thorny mess, depending on what variety you're putting in, they can be a little hard to protect with netting. But other than netting, I don't think there's any way to keep birds off of them. Typically, blackberries are a safer bet, though, against birds than blueberries or some of the other fruit like that. I think blackberries, I would say your odds are pretty good that you're going to get them before the birds do any real damage there. Yeah. I would say, netting is tough on blackberries, but it is doable. So if you buy bird netting, the downside of bird netting is that sometimes animals get trapped inside of it. They do find a way in, and then they get trapped inside. And it's not necessarily fail-proof against squirrels, so you'd still have problems with that. But I would say that if he can get out there and harvest on a kind of regular, consistent basis, he should be able to stay ahead of the wildlife.
So he's got to beat the early bird, is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much. I think just consistent, steady on harvesting should be okay. Do you know what variety he has?
I do not.
Do not? Okay. Are they thornless?
They are thornless. Yep.
Okay. That should make the caging part a little easier. Are they trellised up?
They're kind of on a fence, so they're creeping along the fence.
Yeah. Okay. That's good in that it gets them up off the ground. It's bad that it gives the squirrels a terrific runway straight into the blackberry patch. So you got pros and cons there.
All right. Well, I will pass along your advice, and hopefully he can take advantage. Make sure he gets some good blackberries. All right. This is our second question of the day. Comes from our close friend Tabia, and she wants to know what is eating my basil. Now, obviously, that's a hard question for you to answer without seeing it. So the question that we're going to ask is, what are some common pests that like to eat basil, and what can you do about it?
So there's probably 90% probability that what's eating Tabia's basil is going to be snails and slugs. We had a very wet January, February, March, April. We're all above average rainfall. Created a lot of moisture there, the right habitat for snails and slugs. They actually like it before it gets too hot. They're particularly bad this time of year, and they love basil. The thing about snails and slugs is, so you would look at your plant and there would be holes in the leaves. But then when you turn the leaf over or you look at the plant, you don't see anything because they're nocturnal. They come up at night. They do the damage. They disappear during the day. So when you're out looking for what's damaging your basil, you don't see anything. So you're just preemptively. The best way to combat snails and slugs is hygiene, typically. So cleaning, any kind of mulch, wood chips, leaves, any wood, any if it's in a pot, the pot has a saucer, maybe take it out of the saucer, get rid of the saucer for a few little while so they can't hide between, under, on the sides. Basically, if you can get the basil situated so that the slugs and snails have to travel farther to get to it, you can reduce the damage quite a bit. There's some people say like coffee grounds scattered around. They don't like coffee grounds very much, so coffee grounds sprinkled around the base of the plant would help deter them. Copper tape you can buy at a garden center would help discourage them. My experience is that when you have a heavy population, that they overcome those barriers. But the best way to do it is just clean out any hiding place. Give that plant, the basil plants, as much room as you can. Don't mulch them. Going back to our earlier comment about soil temperatures, basil is also going to do better in warm soils. So putting mulch on top, the mulch is going to collect all that solar energy anyway. So pull the mulch off for now. If you got wheat straw, if you got wood chips, if you got pine bark, whatever it is, move it away. Let the soil get warm in the sun and dry in the sun, and that will help with the snails and slugs.
All right, great tips there for the basil. Good call on the snails and slugs, because I think Tadia did mention that she had no trace of what it was that was eating them. So I think you may have nailed it on that one. All right, so this is our third question for the day. We do have one bonus question, but this is our third gardening question of the day. So this one comes to us from our friend Kate, which you got a preview of on our staff call this morning. Kate is growing rhubarb for the first time, and she's got it in her raised bed. Now, she's saying that you're not supposed to harvest it in the first year. That's one of the things she knows. So she doesn't want to harvest it this year, but it's taking up a lot of space in her raised bed. Does it make sense to kind of prune it back, or will that essentially count as harvesting it? Or can it be transplanted? What are we thinking about with rhubarb here?
So rhubarb is a plant that does better a little north of here. There are some successful growers in the North Georgia mountains, higher elevation, cooler evenings. In Atlanta, it's pretty tricky. In the metro Atlanta area, it's hard for rhubarb to make it through the summers particularly well. On the harvesting, she probably does not want to remove leaves to make more space in the garden. It also, we're coming up on warm weather, so not an ideal time to transplant it either. If it hasn't been there, if it was just planted this year, if she just bought the roots last fall and put it in, she may be able to move it now, water it heavily and all that. Move it into a place. Ideally, you would get morning sun, afternoon shade, so the plant isn't put under too much water stress in the afternoons. And make sure you keep it watered a lot, irrigated, and don't harvest the leaves. One thing I would say, though, as the plant matures, and you are trimming off leaves to make room in the garden and to manage the plant. Also, when you're trimming and you are harvesting the stalks, it's always a good idea to put the leaves back around the base of the plant. Rhubarb, I think it's salicylic acid. It uses a lot of it, and it will tend to deplete soil. So it's best to recycle the foliage back into the ground. So instead of removing those leaves to the compost bin and composting it over there, it's best to put them right around the base of the plant, let it break back down into the soil at the root zone, let the plant reabsorb that. But no matter what you do, there's going to be an element of luck involved in raising a successful rhubarb crop in Atlanta. I mean, rhubarb is delicious. It is amazing. It is fantastic. I deeply regret that I have not been able to grow it successfully because I grew up in a place where it grew pretty well. Yeah. And we had a lot of it, and it was so fantastic.
Yeah, when I was in Northern Ireland last summer in July, I noticed rhubarb everywhere and got a little bit more curious about it. But now that you're saying this about the climate, that makes perfect sense because they have a very temperate climate. It rarely gets below freezing, but it also rarely gets very hot. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it can actually take freezing pretty well.
Oh.
It can take pretty cold. You could grow it as all the way up to the Canada border. I mean,
wow.
The cold isn't the problem for rhubarb. So, and I don't know, I have not been, because of social distancing and sheltering in place, I have not been to the DeKalb Farmers Market lately to see if it's in season right now. I've kind of, like, because I don't grow it personally, I'm kind of out of step, but it should be either just ending, the season should be just ending probably, or we're right in the middle of it.
Huh. All right. Well, I know you've got a busy week coming up. About to go do some seedling delivery and for you a little seedling installation at a firehouse. So if you're at a community garden this week, there's a good chance you're going to see somebody from Foodwell Alliance either dropping off some compost and seedlings, or maybe Kari's coming to just turn up your bed. So we got to run, but thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to do this every week with our good friend Fred. We're looking for your gardening questions. So if you have an issue in your garden, something's not working right, you maybe want to try something new, please send us your questions. You can just direct message us. You can also email gardens@foodwellalliance.org. We'll be doing some more posts to remind you guys, so you can also leave comments and email us individually, all kinds of ways. But every Monday morning, we're going to be answering your gardening questions. Want to try to help out as many first-time, second-time, third-time gardeners as we can. So good luck out there, and we will catch you next week. Fred, any last words of wisdom for the gardeners out there?
Sure. If at first you don't succeed, keep planting.
Keep on planting. All right. Thanks, Fred. Appreciate your time, and we will see you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.